Hello, Brian.
Hey, Shel, how you doing, man?
Good. Let me give a better angle here. Okay, so I am recording, and remind me how long we go.
Let's go for 15 minutes.
Okay.
All right. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about your career. Let's talk about what you're doing. This is the first time I get a chance to see your beautiful face, man. Sometimes you're like hiding. This is great. Talk about how you started because you've done a lot of things that I don't know a lot of my audience knows about.
Okay. Well, I don't know how far you want to go back, but certain parts of my life really started at age 12 when I became an activist. And that was because I went to a demonstration about the Vietnam War, my very first one, and one of the speakers said, "The Vietnam War is an undeclared war." And I hadn't actually known that. And so, like all the stuff we learned in social studies class about checks and balances and the three powers of government, boom! And I started questioning everything. So then a few years later, in order to better promote the causes I was involved with when I was 15, I became a marketer. So since my teenage years, I've been blending those two things together, the business world and the activist world. And then in November 1999, I had just moved to where I live now a year earlier. I live on a dairy farm next to a mountain that's a state park, a really lovely place, but it's also 15 minutes from town. So I have the best of both worlds. And anyway, this developer announced that he was going to put up 40 McMansions going all the way from the highway to the ridge line, ruining the view from that state park. And all the experts were saying, this is terrible, but there's nothing we can do. And you know what? It wasn't the developer's plan. It was the experts saying there was nothing we can do that got me to prove them wrong. So I said, what the heck do you mean? And I started a movement called Save the Mountain. And I went in with the attitude that we would win. And I think that's a lot of why we did win, is that we had that mindset organizationally, and I had it individually, that it was just a matter of time. I thought it would take us 5 years. Well, 13 months later, a year and a month, we saved that mountain. It became state land. And I thought, wow, how do we do that so fast? And what lessons can I take from that? And I decided to think about how that campaign had used everything I knew from the marketing and business side. And I thought, what can the activist world teach business? And I came up with the idea that business could profit by doing the right thing, by being environmentally and socially conscious and impactful. So then I spent the last 20 plus years really looking at how that could happen. And the more research I did, the more I found that yes, these were profitability strategies. I've written actually 4 books on this. This is the most recent, Guerrilla Marketing to Heal the World. And it's been an exciting thing. And while I personally have, I don't think had as much impact as I wanted to in this world, I have seen the business world has really moved up on this. The business world has decided that yes, doing the right thing can be a success strategy. They did it mostly without my help, but I was certainly contributing to the narrative. And I've reached, I don't know, some hundreds or thousands of people through my speaking and writing. So that's been kind of a twisty journey, but I still feel like that's where it is. And now, having, I think, done a lot to really help create that awareness in society as a whole, I'm now looking at, in this time where we have a federal government that is attacking its own people, I have been looking at the activist side again, and specifically about the population who are my age and older. I am about to turn 69 as we are recording this, and I had the luxury and enjoyable experience in my 20s of being a paid organizer for the Gray Panthers, which was an elders' rights organization. So I was assigned to rebuild the Brooklyn chapter, which was dormant. I was 1979 and 80. I was 22 and 23 when this work was going on. And so I'm coming back to that now and thinking the people in my age group, a lot of them were activists long ago, and then they took time off, had a family, never got back into it, and others never saw a need for activism. But now, as the society is kind of falling apart around us, they're seeing a role for themselves. So I'm hoping my next book will be on how to be a badass activist when you're 60 and above. And I have great role models
I
for this.
love that. That is great.
Yeah, I have two different women whose 100th birthday parties I went to who were still activists on their 100th birthday, 3 years apart.
That's good.
So I've got lots of great role models. When I was a Grey Panther organizer, I got to meet Maggie Kuhn, the founder of that organization, who was a powerhouse. She started the Grey Panthers because she got kicked out of her job for the crime of turning 65.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and this was the Presbyterian Church, which really ought to have known better. So mandatory retirement was what birthed the Grey Panthers, the first really vocal and visible and activist elders group that I'm aware of.
The good
Yes.
thing about that is that you live in the right place. You chose the right place to live, not only for safety, but comfort, but knowing what was going on around you, which is how we're supposed to do it. Because I see a lot of people, specifically out of Southern California, being chased out due to high rents and stuff like that. They're going to the wrong places because they think it's less expensive. And
Mhm.
then the other thing that you're doing is you're also, and I don't know if you know, because sometimes you get deep into it, you don't always know who you may be encouraging
Oh yeah,
outside of
yeah.
your whole brand, and I
I,
think that's great.
I think that's true on both levels. I, as an encourager, don't always know what my impact is, but also the people who influenced me often have no idea.
Yeah,
That guy
yeah.
who made that speech, he doesn't know who I was. I don't even know his name, you know? And yet he left a profound impact on me. Sometimes you do get to tell people. I got to go up to Dave Dellinger from the Chicago 7, Chicago 8 in the 1970s. He was speaking at a tiny little peace demonstration in Washington, D.C., where I was doing a college internship. And I went up to him afterwards, and I didn't really know who he was or his history, but what he had said at the rally was really good. And I went up and told him. And later I found out he's this famous guy, and he became friends with me, and we corresponded for several years. And his thinking on nonviolence has really influenced mine, and he got to hear that it did. So that's really nice when you get to tell people what they mean to you.
How did
But
that make you feel
how did which piece make me feel?
when you started corresponding with him, and then you ended up doing stuff, and he heard you speak? How did that make you feel?
I don't know if he ever heard me speak, but he heard me talk about what the knowledge he had imparted to me had meant.
Yeah,
So, and I think that made him feel pretty good. I'm pretty sure of it, in fact. Because we all like to be appreciated. We all like to know that we make a difference. And the difference we make, I mean, when I started Save the Mountain, I had no idea that we were going to win in 13 months. And that influenced a lot of people. I had one very experienced local environmental activist who was in our core group come to me near the end of that campaign and say, I want to sit at your feet and learn how you did this. And like, I'm no guru. I'm just one guy working from a farmhouse. But it felt good to hear that. It felt good that my words had made a difference to her because she had made a difference to me. And I've been fortunate to be able to actually interact with a lot of my mentors who didn't know they were mentors to me. Uh, was a music reviewer for many years, so I got to talk to some pretty high-level performers, interview them, and hang out with them to some degree. It was really nice to spend a half an hour on the phone with Joan Baez in the 1980s. It was really nice to go up to Pete Seeger after a concert and do a little interview. Pete, I actually met many times because he was part of something called the People's Music Network that I used to go to their conferences. And you'd see him picking up garbage at a folk festival. You'd see him just hanging out in the halls of the conference, just being a person. And it was a good lesson to me that famous people are just people. And you, on the Hollywood side, I'm sure you've encountered that as well.
yeah. It's funny about that is I will literally go out. I mean, I'm in my extra bedroom, my mom's house. It's like walking into a museum. It's spotless. There isn't anything that's out of place. It's black and white. It's just very clean. And what I do is I learn how to be clean when I do that. So when I walk outside, I'm like, I start picking up garbage because if you remember that old commercial with the Indian crying and he sees things, I still think of that. We're not supposed to be doing that. We're supposed to be living in a clean area and having clean drinking water, which is kind of why you're an activist. And I kind of do the same thing in a different way. And I'm telling you, I tell kids, you know what? If you don't clean up the stuff, if you don't clean up your drinking water, you're not going to be alive.
Mhm.
If we don't have trees, we don't have bumblebees, and we don't have the coral reefs, there is no human race. The planet will be fine. It will
Yeah,
regenerate itself, but we
yeah.
will not.
I
And the
once wrote a
surprise
poem called Gaia Will Be Fine. And it said that the planet will be fine, the cockroaches will be fine, but we won't be. Get our
Exactly.
act together.
Now you see everything turning backwards. How does that make you feel? And what did your parents think when you became an activist?
Well, my mom was an activist.
Okay.
So I come by it honestly. She challenged her own parents' racism regularly. She marched with Martin Luther King on August 28th, 1963. And
Wow.
the thing that really influenced me that she was doing is she was a volunteer for the Urban League in the Bronx. And she would go to an apartment where a black family had been told, oh, sorry, it's already rented. And sweet white lady mom would try to rent it to see what happened. And if this apartment was suddenly available, then they found themselves with a nice lawsuit on their hands. And, so she was doing really good, important work. And I remember her yelling at our own landlord that he needed to rent to her friends who were black. Um, so she lived that truth. My dad was not an activist. My dad was actually pretty self-involved. Um, but he was also a maverick. He encouraged me that he had found his own way in a society that was not always accepting of his ways. And so I had that for a model too. So my mom was a little scared when I started to do things like going to a protest where I was likely to be arrested, which I was in Seabrook in 1977. But she was concerned about my safety. She wasn't concerned about my politics so much. I was to the left of her, so there was some tension there. And we had some issues that we fought about. Like she was very upset when I became a vegetarian, which I still am more than 50 years later. Um, but I was raised in a culture where the doing right was a value and finding your own truth was a value. So it was actually very good prep for me. And my kids are both activists in their 30s. And they started young. My younger one did their first bit of activism at age 6. And actually, my older one, she wrote a letter to the newspaper that got published when she was 6. So we're raising them right.
See, that's a good thing. So that's a proud dad. And then your mom, deep down, she was proud of you, what
Oh
you were
yeah,
doing, but she didn't
yeah.
expect you to go that far. But then again, things were different then too, just like when she was marching, just like now, you know?
And she marched, by the way, to the end of her life. She was still going out to peace demonstrations during the Iraq War, and she died in 2011. So as long as her health held up, she was up there on that vigil every Saturday.
Mm. What do you see with today's, not really getting into the politics, but we see everything being rolled back.
We
When
do,
I'm traveling
and we're
across
fighting
country, I
like
mean,
hell to stop it and to it may be an opportunity, because the half-assed solutions that the Democratic Party has put forward don't galvanize people. And the direct and real threat to our personal liberties, to our way of life, to our Constitution that is happening now under the current government may be more mobilizing. That's why I think it's time to do this Activism for Elders book, because people are pissed. And the interesting thing is research by Erica Chenoweth and Maria, I think her last name is Stefan, show that if you can mobilize just 3.5% of the population to withdraw consent from the government, that government tends to topple. So that's not an insurmountable number. At the last No Kings Day, there were like 7 million people involved. That's um, more than half the way to that 3.5%. And you have to figure for every person who marched, there was somebody else who couldn't get off work, and another person who was undocumented and couldn't show up because they didn't want to get busted, and on and on and on. So the reality is, we probably already have that 3.5%. It has to be organized and it has to be um, knit together in a way that is resilient. So that's some steps for the movement now. But we, in terms of even the people who voted for Trump are what's the word I'm looking for? They're leaving in massive numbers. We see most elections that have been held since then have had a big swing toward the Democrats and away from the Republicans. We've seen Marjorie Taylor Greene resign. Times are changing. We have seen scandal after scandal that used to roll off like a duck's back off this criminal that's in charge. And now we are seeing resistance within the Republican Party. We're seeing resistance in the courts. We're seeing resistance in certain aspects of Congress. And of course, we're seeing resistance in the people's actions. Every little small town now has demonstrations. It could be a town of 600 people, and they'll have 20 people out on the corner on Saturday. Um, so I'm actually very optimistic, but we do have to live through this hell time first. And we have to make sure that people are protected. And that is hard to do when they're paying absolutely no attention to the rule of law and they're coming after you with guns and masks and yanking people off the street who have every right to be here. And it's very ugly. And this is how it started in the 30s. And this is how pretty much every authoritarian government gets its start, with little things against marginal people. And then it expands and expands, and suddenly you have no freedom left. So this is really a very important time to mobilize, to get involved. If you're not involved, find your local indivisible chapter. That's a good place to start, because they're all over the country and they're easy to find. Get involved. Know who your representatives are in your state house and in Congress, and talk to them regularly. Send them mail. Meet with them once in a while. If you're an organized group, they will meet with you, and on it goes.
How can people reach out to you? How can they buy your book? And what's a piece of advice that you would give to young people who are going to hear this message for the first time?
Okay, well, I'll start with that last piece because it's so important. It's that ordinary people can make a huge difference. What is more ordinary than a seamstress? Okay. A seamstress named Rosa Parks sparked the civil rights movement, getting orders of magnitude bigger. She was not the first, by the way. And she was not random. She was a trained activist. She was involved in her local NAACP chapter. She had studied at Highlander Center, which trained a bunch of people in strategic nonviolence. Um, but what's more ordinary than an electrician working in a shipyard? One of those guys, named Lech Walesa, led the revolt against the Soviet Union in Poland and became its president. Um, who would think that a person serving a life sentence in prison would change the world, when his name is Nelson Mandela? Um, on and on it goes. Ordinary people make a difference. Lois Gibbs was a housewife. She created several pieces of legislation about toxics and right to know after her hometown of Love Canal in Niagara Falls was shown to be toxic. So we can all make a difference. So that's the biggest thing I want people to come away with, is knowing that you can. I mean, I personally, not only did I start the movement that saved the mountain, but I'm responsible for the first non-smokers' rights regulations in Northampton, Massachusetts, which is the town next to where I live now. And that was in the 80s. And it was just me and my city councilor that got that through. So we can all make a difference. How to get in touch with me and how to buy the book, both of those are answered at goingbeyondsustainability.com. And I hope to have something up there soon. I don't have it yet, to be notified if I get the aging book published, the aging activism book, if you want to hear about that. But anyway, sign up for my newsletter and then you'll hear about it. And there's a bunch of free gifts, by the way, too. If you sign up for the newsletter, there's all sorts of goodies if you look under freebies. Again, that site is goingbeyondsustainability.com. And, I'm very easy to approach. I will give pretty much anyone a 15-minute comp session to explore how you can incorporate social change and environmental good into your own business or your own life if you're not in business. And basically, I'm an idea person. I see connections that other people miss. I see ways of moving that are involved what they call lateral thinking, not just thinking forward, but thinking sideways, looking at what some other industry has done that might apply to you. It's really fun, exciting stuff to do, Brian.
And social media links so people can reach out to you also.
Yeah,
If you have.
Facebook under my name, LinkedIn under my name. I left the application formerly known as Twitter because it became a cesspool after a certain horrible person bought it. Um, so I'm not there anymore. I'm on Blue Sky, but the reality is I don't really use it. And so LinkedIn is the best way to reach out to me. Facebook is the second. Oh, here's a cool thing I do on Facebook. Every single day I post a gratitude journal on Facebook. I have done this, excuse me, for more than 2,800 consecutive days, going back to March 2018.
Good for you, man.
And
Good for
that's
you.
got its little fan club. It's funny the things you do. When I started that, I never thought that would be the thing that would get traction.
Well, gratitude never goes away. I always say you should have the three G's: gratitude, you know, Giving Tuesday instead of the one Tuesday. We always talk about it on our shows. Every Tuesday is
Mhm.
always Giving Tuesday, just not one out of the year.
Yeah.
And just being grateful,
Yeah.
just those three things. So I got to end with that because this is really important. I want to thank you for this. And they will be looking out for you because it's always good to spread the word on things like
Yeah,
this.
and it's great that we've had this conversation. I know we had a few false starts along the way, but I'm glad it finally happened, and it was really fun to be here with you. And I think we've given your viewers some things to think about and to do.
Now you can press stop.